As we get started here, I really wanted to remind everybody about Metro and what Metro is doing. So Metro connects people, places, and opportunities through quality transit service. This mission and vision of ours is really focused on finding multiple ways that we can provide mobility to the residents of Omaha and the greater Omaha region. Metro is going through quite a few changes right now, and for the first time, we have an elected board of directors. This group of 7 board members is tasked with making large decisions that help shape Metro's services, and there'll be a lot of opportunities for them to contact the board. You can go to ometro.com and find out more, as well as attend future board meetings where we will be discussing this upcoming microtransit project and others. So as we move into thinking about this pilot project that we're here to discuss, it's important to remember who Metro is and what we do. We are the planner, the builder, and the operator of public transit services. Currently, we offer 3 different types of services. One is our regular fixed route buses, which operate um, throughout the community on various streets, express routes, as well as within neighborhoods to connect people, places, and opportunities. We also have our first rapid transit line on Dodge Street named Orbit. And then a very important piece of what Metro offers to the community is paratransit or MOBI service, which is a service for individuals with disabilities to continue to make sure that they can access places, people, and opportunities that matter to them. Moving forward, what the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss a potential new pilot service, and that is microtransit. This would be in addition to our current service offerings and would be a new type of service that is something we haven't tried in Omaha before. It has been very successful in other cities around the country and would operate with very small vans and other vehicles. It is really a service that's designed to fill in gaps within our system and provide neighborhood connections into the larger transit network. I'm going to turn this over in a minute to Evan, our Senior Manager of Planning and Scheduling, to tell us more about this project. But I do want to emphasize that this is a pilot project that is currently planned to test how this might work in the region. It is still subject to approval from Metro's Board of Directors. And so at this point, we're very interested in hearing from the community and trying to learn more about your reactions, your ideas, and your feedback on this proposed pilot before it is finalized. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Evan.
Thanks, Lauren. So we wanted to start this meeting by really explaining what exactly is microtransit service. And it's, as Lauren mentioned, a new type of service that we would be introducing and testing in Omaha that kind of helps fill the gaps between our fixed route services. So you can think of it kind of like a mix between a bus and rideshare. It is still a shared trip, but the routing is not fixed. So it will get you from point A to point B, and the routing will be variable based on other trip requests in the same zone. It's all about coming up with new ways to get further into neighborhoods and help people connect into our broader system to address transportation gaps across our region. So on slide 7, the question is, what might microtransit look like in Omaha? And to start out, we're proposing 3 zones, one in North Omaha, one in South Omaha, and one in West Omaha. And each of these zones has been designed to allow for connections within that area, as well as a connection to a transit center where riders can get plugged in and travel elsewhere across the network. And we should also note that the North Omaha zone includes several additional destinations that are important to serve, even though they're outside of the zone proposed boundary. Slide 8 covers some of the basics of this new service. So first of all, with our funding, as we've said, this is a pilot project, and we're proposing at this time to test it over a 3-year period. We're very thankful for generous philanthropic donors in our local community who have seen this as a need and are interested to study and explore these options together. In terms of the fare, we have not finalized that yet. At this point, we are looking at about $3 per trip, and we're inviting the public to comment on whether that price seems right or not. Our service hours, again, nothing is finalized yet, but we're looking for it to mirror pretty closely with our fixed route system. So Monday through Friday, we're proposing to have the service available between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. On Saturdays, it would be available from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And Sundays would be available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. On slide 9, we go through a couple more basic elements of microtransit. In terms of requesting a ride, that could be made through an app that will be available or by calling a dedicated number. Both of those services will be available in English and Spanish, but we're also hoping to provide it in additional languages if possible. In terms of accessibility, we are hoping for a portion of the fleet to be wheelchair accessible to guarantee that anyone who uses a mobility device can experience and enjoy the service to the same degree as anyone who is fully mobile. In terms of paying for the ride, we're going to be offering payment options through the app itself, and we also are exploring additional ways that people can pay, just to make sure that we can accommodate those who may not have a smartphone. This next slide shows a system map of all of the routes in our network, and you can see that those go really across the entire region. And we've shaded some areas to indicate those proposed zones of this new pilot service. For the North Omaha zone, it has its northern boundary at I-680 and the Missouri River. The eastern boundary is about 9th Street, Carter Lake Park, and 11th Street closer to Millwork Commons. The southern boundary would be Cumming Street as it leads into Radial Highway, and then the western boundary would be approximately 52nd Street. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 locations that will be eligible pickup and drop-off sites for that North Omaha zone, and those include Epley Airfield, Open Door Mission, and 33rd and Dodge Orbit Station. And so those are indicated on the map with a blue circle and a white star. The South Omaha zone, we're proposing to have the northern boundary be Interstate 80, the eastern boundary to be Henry Dorley Zoo and 13th Street, the southern boundary to be Harrison Street at the Sarpy County line. The western boundary would be 72nd Street, with an inclusion of Bergen Mercy Hospital as well as Walmart at 72nd and Pine. For the West Omaha zone, we're proposing a northern boundary of Maple Road, an eastern boundary of 102nd Street and I-680, with connections into West Roads Transit Center. The southern boundary would be West Center Road, and the western boundary would be 144th Street. So this does include connections to Oakview Mall, even though it's slightly south of Center. And again, we are taking feedback on these zones. They have been identified as gaps in our system that we feel this pilot project will really help us understand travel patterns and connect people into our fixed routes. So during our analysis and review of potential zone areas, we really wanted to study demographic information and understand the impact to the residents of these areas. So as part of that analysis, we looked at the disability population as stated in the American Community Survey over the most recent 5 years available. So the map shown on slide 10 shows various shades of purple that indicate stated disabilities for the households in that area. Each of these zones includes shading that indicates some neighborhoods have less than 5% stated disability, while each zone also indicates areas where more than 20% of households are reporting a disability. This next slide, number 11, shows in green various colors of low-income population. And that is as stated within that same data set of the American Community Survey. So the green shading, again, shows low percentages in some neighborhoods, that's less than 5%. And the zones also indicate areas with higher than 20% of low-income population. Slide 12 shows the minority population as reported in the most recent census data. So again, we've got various shades of red that indicate the number of households identifying as a minority. And some of these neighborhoods show percentages above 75%, and those are the darkest red. And then the lower gradients of red indicate lower areas of racial minority concentration. And again, this information helped us to really study the neighborhoods and determine what type of impact this new service might have in those communities. And it should be noted that the microtransit zones overall serve a higher concentration of racial minority than the city of Omaha average. Now, in terms of how you can help, slide 13 lists out some of your options. First of all, we haven't named this new service. So if you have any ideas, let us know in the chat or through the comment form that we have available. We're also looking for feedback on the various items mentioned, such as the price, any other concerns with the zone boundaries, the service parameters, and we'd also like to answer any questions that anyone may have about this new service. So the feedback form can be found at ometro.com/micro-meetings. And if you scroll down, you can click on the button to take the survey. Now, at this time, we'll be happy to answer any questions that have been posted to the chat. So
Eben, I do see a hand raise, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute them so they can ask their question.
thank you.
Hi, this is Christian from Human Rights Relations Department, Assistant Director. We have a couple of questions. Let me lower my hand. So I'm looking at the map here, and I basically the areas where you identify minority population, and it struck me a little bit that there is no transit between 72nd Street on Pacific all the way to 100 and, I mean, there is nothing actually. There is no connection over there. So, and there are so many industries over there. How are you going to connect the people where they live with the industry in that area? So that is my first question. My second question is about the value. When you talk about the $3 price for the fare. So if I understand, you call or you basically use your app, you request a service, they go pick you up and drop you to one of the main lines. Is that correct? That's how it works?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So my question here on cost efficient, in the highly concentrated areas, couldn't it be better to have a van looping around? And sometimes could they have on a specific schedule instead of people connecting like a type of taxi type of thing? I don't know, you look into that possibility. So those are my two questions, basically. How can you connect people coming from East Omaha if you don't have any transportation from 72nd on Pacific to the west? Knowing there is a lot of development going there. And the second question is like the alternative of looping these vans in the high concentration areas where people can have some schedule where they know they want to pass. So instead of using the app, they know exactly what the time is going to pass and they're connecting to the main routes. That's it. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for your question. To start out, I wanted to make sure that everyone understood. So the concern was identified that this area between Dodge and Center is an identified gap that would be beneficial to serve as well. And at this time, we will have to, unfortunately, kind of weigh our budget for this pilot with all of the areas of need. So I can't say one way or the other whether we'd be able to expand the zone to include the areas you've requested, but we can take that under consideration. And in terms of your question about the vehicles circulating in those areas to help plug people into the system, I should clarify that these vehicles will be available during the time frame that we've specified. So it should allow for response times that are pretty comparable. What we have seen in other cities that have piloted this service is over time, they're able to see if patterns emerge with a lot of trips requested in a specific neighborhood or along a specific route. And over time, that helps planners decide if a fixed route would be a better way to serve that need. So this is a new tool for us, and we're expecting that it will kind of expose some opportunity areas that would warrant additional service than what the pilot can provide. So hopefully that answered your questions. And if not, we can continue to discuss. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to combine two of them here. Why aren't we increasing services to Papillion, Bellevue, and Gretna? And why isn't the service being made available based on city limits?
Sure. Lauren, I don't know if you would like to address the broader question about those additional communities.
I'd be happy to. So for a little bit of context, Metro is the Regional Metropolitan Transit Authority of Omaha, and we're actually a political subdivision of the state of Nebraska. Currently, our service area is limited to the city of Omaha limits, which is really the basis of our board as well as our service limitations. We are able to go outside of the city of Omaha limits, but through either those cities and areas joining the Regional Metropolitan Transit Authority officially through their elected body, or by entering into a contract with us. So we certainly realize the importance of connecting the overall region together. And we're very proud that we do offer some services into Sarpy County as well as Pottawatomie County, but those are done through contracts with those cities. We'd be happy to provide more context overall and what it would look like for Metro to expand beyond the city of Omaha limits. It is an exciting new opportunity that is possible now that we have become a regional transit authority, but we require working with those communities and those elected bodies in order to do so. We would love to hear feedback on that, and also would encourage you to share that feedback and concerns with the elected bodies, the city councils in cities in those neighborhoods.
Okay, a couple more questions. I'm going to combine these again. Estimated launch date for the service. Can you schedule a ride in advance, and how many vehicles will be circulating in the zones?
Yeah, so we haven't identified a start date for this new service. We are still in the process of identifying a specific contractor that would deliver the service. And so some of that, as details are worked out, we are eager to share. We'd like to get it started this year. But it will depend a little bit on some of the startup decisions that are still being made. Remind me the other questions.
Can you schedule a ride in advance, and how many vehicles?
Yes, so the number of vehicles is not necessarily a fixed thing. It'll scale up and down based on how many people are requesting rides at a given time. So what we're looking to monitor is the wait times that customers experience. And so we can add or reduce vehicles as needed as long as we maintain a reasonable response time to those requests. In terms of scheduling in advance, that is a feature that we would like to have, and it will depend on which contractor we award the contract to, whether their app allows that capability.
I would add to that, right now we are anticipating each zone would have between 5 and 7 vehicles assigned to it. That might go up or down depending on the time of day and the demand to make sure we're accommodating that. But each zone would have multiple vehicles circulating within each zone.
And we have a question about if they will be electric vehicles.
Yes, so we did explore that option through our RFP process to see what capabilities existed, but we haven't finalized the decision on what vehicles will operate the service.
We have a question on how this will affect paratransit users not on a fixed bus route.
So this Microtransit pilot is kind of a standalone service compared to paratransit. So anyone who is a current paratransit client would be eligible to ride in the zones. So they can use the service the same as anyone else.
Rhonda has a question about the contract with bordering counties. I don't have a question in here specifically. Rhonda, I'm trying to find your mic so I can unmute you here. While I am looking for that though.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my name's Rhonda and I'm legally blind. I utilize Mobi, but I live inside the city limits. I have a friend that is just on the border of La Vista, and even though she got approved for Mobi, she is on the other side of the border. So she was told if she could get to a bus stop, then Mobi could come pick her up. You had mentioned the different contracts that people have set up or are able to utilize. And I was just wondering more information about that because right now, she has lost sight and she is driving herself still to work because of where she lives, and it's very dangerous. So just kind of wanted a little bit more information on how I find out those resources for her, first off. And second, will this eventually eliminate Mobi, or will Mobi still be available for us?
Yes, thank you. So I will start with the first question. You asked about contracts with services outside the city of Omaha limits. So right now, the services that we have contract for are really the express routes that go to Ralston and La Vista and Papillion, as well as to Bellevue, as well as with the blue and yellow routes in Council Bluffs. At this time, there is not an existing contract with those cities to provide Mobi services. However, many of them do provide additional services within those communities. I would recommend you or your friend contact Metro through our website, through our customer service, and we can set up a call with you to explain what some of those options are.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of whether or not this would replace, the question was also asked of whether or not this would replace Mobi service. Our intention is this would not replace either Mobi or our fixed route service. We are proposing this pilot project to really add to and augment our current services. We anticipate that this microtransit pilot would be accessible for individuals with disabilities as well as to fully abled individuals would both be able to use this in addition to Mobi and fixed route services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, couple questions about the zones I'm going to go ahead and combine here. Christy is asking, does microtransit necessarily link to an existing transit line, or can it be used for point-to-point transit within each zone? And we have another question on the zones asking if the pickup zones are people's houses and their destinations, or are they designated spots/stops for pickup and drop off?
Sure, yeah, so the zones, we haven't identified exact locations yet, but the idea is that it would be a nearby pickup and drop off zone, like the intersection near your house, but not necessarily your driveway. And so that feature allows us to optimize response times for everyone, but it does require a little bit more distance on the front end or the very end of your trip as you're seeking your destination. But to answer the question, yes, you may book a microtransit trip within a zone that will take you from A to B without ever interacting with a fixed route. Anytime that a fixed route exists that could complete the trip, microtransit will help connect you to that route. So it's not designed to compete with or duplicate existing services on our routes. It's really, the intention is to fill those gaps and help people complete that first and last mile.
If someone is using the microtransit service to reach a fixed route, will they need additional tickets for the fixed route? I would like to understand the total cost.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. We are still kind of finalizing the details of how those connections would happen. But the purpose of the pilot is really to supplement our fixed route network. So we want to ensure that those connections are as easy as possible, including the payment process.
We have a question about the number of cars. So I'm going to go ahead and read this verbatim. If the number of cars used for microtransit services fluctuates, are these cars already assigned to the service and parked somewhere ready for use, or are they kept in reserve and brought in only when needed? Additionally, is the number of jobs created measured over a 3-year period, or is it based on the number of rides provided?
Yeah, those are interesting questions, and it will probably depend on the approach of the contractor that is awarded the contract. Basically, the way we have it set up, we are monitoring the level of response and quality of service provided to the customer. And however many vehicles or drivers that they require to reach those levels of service is kind of flexible in terms of their operations. So I would assume a contractor would probably have a fleet of vehicles at the ready that can be deployed as needed to ensure that they respond to demand. And then in terms of hiring, it will be contracted labor. So the number of employees that they hire will just depend on the level of service that they need to respond to.
And Holly is asking, they say they have to take an Uber to get on Mobi and they live in city limits. They are asking, will this new service help?
Yes, so that's the type of trip that Microtransit is looking to supplement. It depends for your specific situation where you live. If your origin is within one of these zones and it's able to connect you to your Moby pickup point, then yes, this option would be available to you. And probably much cheaper than the current method of how you're getting to that point.
How close to a fixed route will Microtransit run?
Well, you can see on the maps that in many cases, the zone overlaps existing routes. So it's really a case by case depending on the trips requested. So when you enter your starting point and your destination, the app will identify the best path, whether it's a microtransit vehicle, a fixed route, or a combination. And so the algorithm will basically optimize your trip for the fastest and most effective connection from A to B.
Is the microtransit service route planning integrated with digital maps like Google Maps, and what safety features are in place?
So the app routing will depend on, again, the contractor that operates the service. But many of the proposers included app features that have navigation similar to like an Uber or a Lyft type of app where you can see your trip being completed in real time. So that helps provide estimated arrivals of the vehicle as well as an estimated arrival at your destination. And sorry, I don't think I answered the second half of that.
The second question was what safety features are in place?
Sure.
I can take that if you would like, Evan. So,
Yes, thank you.
as Evan mentioned, we are still finalizing a contractor who will operate this service on behalf of Metro. As we go through the process of negotiating the contract with them, we are going to ensure that any contracted service and any of these operators meet Metro's very high safety standards in terms of providing safe and reliable passenger transportation. At a minimum, we will ensure that there are cameras within the vehicles. We will have very strict training requirements for any operators, as well as ensuring that we have just a very good oversight in terms of how they are delivering the service. So a lot of those specifics are still to be worked out, but we will make sure that it meets Metro's overall safety standards and will be actively managed and monitored by staff.
And Leah is asking, I believe, a clarification. If you're within a zone, the microtransit will be available to you with no additional requirements? Question mark.
Yes, so anyone from the general public could request a trip. There's no eligibility screening. It is really there to provide an additional connection for the public that wouldn't be able to otherwise access a fixed route.
And to clarify, so this is open to the public, to anybody can ride within these zones. They'll be able to request the trip either through an application on the phone or by calling and booking a trip.
Okay, and I think this question is likely for you, Lauren. Asking if we know that Lincoln has a similar service and if we are reaching out to them for suggestions.
Yes, absolutely. Microtransit is very common, and a lot of cities are trying this as a pilot project. Lincoln has microtransit as well as Des Moines and a number of other cities. We have had multiple conversations with a number of transit agencies really to learn what worked best, what could be improved, and really getting some guidance overall in this project. So a lot of what you're seeing in this proposal is based on feedback we've received from other transit agencies and from some of the national experts in this space that we're partnering with, and also balanced by the specific needs in Omaha, as well as our budgetary constraints.
Hey, if somebody is taking the service to go from point A to point B and someone else books a ride while they're on their route, will the driver adapt the route? Will the ride time be affected by this?
Yes, so what we're seeing from vendors is a lot of times they have algorithms that factor in travel time and where that vehicle is in process of its route. So if you're 70% there, it's unlikely that they would divert to pick up a new person. But if you're maybe 20% into your trip and there is someone nearby, you may see that vehicle divert to try to get both of those trips grouped into one. So it's very dynamic and just depends on who's requesting at the specific time.
Will the Microtransit app be a separate app from the MyRide and UMO apps?
Unfortunately, because it's a pilot and we are looking to partner with a third party, this will be a standalone app.
And what role will the community play in the decision-making process when selecting the contractor?
Lauren, you might want to address that question.
Yes. So Metro has released a request for proposals, asking for interested parties who are interested in partnering with Metro to provide this service, and has already received proposals. At this point, we are seeking the community feedback on how this service would operate, the zones, the fares, the hours of service, other important considerations that would need to be included in the contract. The contract would then be presented to Metro's Board of Directors for their consideration, which would also include the selection of the vendor at that time. And in our board meetings, which are generally held the fourth Thursday of the month at 8:30 in the morning, any member of the public who's interested would be more than welcome to speak during the public hearing on that agenda item, and provide that feedback directly to staff as well as to the board.
And that is it for questions in the chat at this moment. Oh, someone just snuck one in. What is the total wait time going to be from the micro picking you up to waiting on the stop for the regular route?
Yeah, so that really will depend on the specific trip, the day of the week, and the time of day. So it's likely that you would experience different wait times during rush hour than you would if you're traveling at a lighter usage time. And overall, we are not able at this time to predict exactly what that experience will be, but we want it to be competitive with what people experience and similar to what people would experience when riding the bus. And again, the purpose of the pilot is to better connect our community. So we're hoping this results in faster trips for everyone.
I would also add that during this 3-year pilot period, it's really the purpose of setting this up as a pilot period. One, so we can see how well it's working, but also make those adjustments as needed based on those. So we certainly have expectations that there would be very competitive time travels, very reliable service, and that we would be able to accommodate all of the trips that are requested. And as we go through this pilot period, we will learn more about how it's working, any areas where maybe we need additional resources, additional vehicles in that zone, and be able to adjust accordingly during the pilot period. This is a very dynamic service that is going to change and grow as we learn through the pilot process.
And what is the recommended process for contacting members of the board to encourage their support for this pilot before it goes to vote?
Absolutely. So there's multiple ways in which you can contact Metro's Board of Directors at ometro.com. You can also share any feedback through the survey and feedback specifically on this project, which is www.ometro.com/micro-meetings. All of the comments and feedback that we receive will be summarized and presented to the board of directors for their consideration.
I am seeing the North Omaha zone has a high concentration of low income and minority population. Microservice seems like a good effort, but not compatible with the profile of the zone. Can we add a fixed line? Is micro less expensive than adding a line?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, during this pilot phase, we're really hoping to study trends of how riders are using the service. And that will really reveal any potential for new route patterns. So we do have quite a few existing bus routes in North Omaha that are heavily utilized. The community is pretty familiar with those options. But we're expecting that new patterns may emerge. And so if we identify that strong need, then we would assess whether it's more cost effective to serve that need through microtransit or through a fixed route. So any of those decisions will come in the future as we really take in the information and observe how the community is using this service. But to the point about the profile of the North Omaha zone specifically, we agree with you that we need to be very mindful of the community and how they access this service. So it's very important to Metro as well as our stakeholders that this service is accessible for those who may not have a smartphone or who travel differently within the community. So we want to knock down as many barriers as we can to ensure the community is able to fully utilize this opportunity.
Okay, we do have a question from Grayson. He said this was a great session and very impactful. They are asking if there is incentive for their time.
I want to say personally, thank you all for taking so much time today and participating in this. This is our 4th meeting on this topic, and we have been very grateful for everybody who has come and shared their feedback, their ideas, their suggestions, as well as voiced their support for this project before it goes to final contract award. Unfortunately, we do not have a way or an opportunity to provide individualized incentives. But I do want to assure everybody that we take your comments and your feedback very seriously. When you generously donate your time to participate in Metro's public meetings like this, we are absolutely here because we want to hear from the community, and we want to make sure that your feedback and your suggestions are helping to shape a project that will be the most beneficial to the most number of people. So thank you very much for being here and being an active community member and advocate for better mobility and transit within the greater Omaha area.
Thank you, Lauren. Those are all of our questions.
With that, we will, staff will stick around in case anybody else has any questions. Members of the audience are welcome to stay, or you can leave. There will be no additional content. As a reminder, this entire presentation and all the slides as well as the recording will be available on our website at www.ometro.com. And please make sure that you submit comments, suggestions through the submission form, which is in the chat. Our public comment period is open through Monday, February 3rd, and we would love to hear your feedback on this project.
Daisy is asking how they can receive notifications about upcoming meetings or additional opportunities for involvement.
Actually, Nicole, why don't you take that?
I was gonna say, I think I might be the right one there. Desi, we post about these quite a bit on our social media, so that is always going to be one of the first places that I point people toward. So if it's Twitter, that's at Ride Orbit ORBT. And actually, Evan, can you go to the very last slide? That has all of our social media information on it for you. We also put messages out on our MyRide system for these. You can receive MyRide push alerts if you sign up. That's myride.ometro.com. And if you go into your account section, you can sign up for push alerts. So you'll receive those. And we also put information on these on our website. We have a question about our service between 144th and Dodge.
Sure. So as mentioned, the West's proposed pilot area would include service to 144th and Dodge. So currently that is served by a park and ride on the 92 Express. So folks may end up using Microtransit to access that park and ride or the Westroads Transit Center. They could also book trips anywhere else within that West zone, and the Microtransit vehicles would be able to pick them up. And I should clarify that 144th Street is the western boundary, except for the area between Pacific and Dodge. The new West Farm development will be included in the area served, so that western boundary is Applied Parkway.
Well, once again, on behalf of Metro, as well as our partners supporting this project, I very much want to thank you all for attending today, for all of the wonderful questions, and very much look forward to hearing all of the suggestions and comments that come through on this pilot project. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and conclude the meeting. There will be no additional content, but thank you so much for all of your time, enthusiasm, and really wonderful questions and suggestions. And look very forward to improving mobility and transit within the region with this exciting new pilot project coming soon.